Guys, I've got an awesome opportunity to tell you about. You can check out the Go Hunt Insider for free for a 30-day free trial right now. All you got to do is go to GoHunt, that's GoHunt.com/JScott. Look for the blue Start Your Free 30-Day Trial button and click there. This is by far the most valuable tool a Western hunter could give themselves. Insider changes how hunts and hunting information are found. When you go in the Insider, you'll be able to check out the Filtering 2.0 system. You'll also be able to check out the draw odds for each unit, for each animal, for each state. Go Hunt Insider has the best draw odds on the market as far as the most accurate. There's no one that gets as meticulous level of accuracy as Go Hunt Insider. You'll see there's complete coverage of 4,200 different profiles, every unit, every state, every species, every season. In-depth analysis, interactive maps, season trends, unit access, camping and lodging nearby, and historical weather. You'll also be able to see some of the additional benefits, the strategy articles on how to apply, let's say in Arizona for elk, for antelope, for deer. You can go in there and see how in-depth they get. It's an unbelievable opportunity, a free 30-day trial. They also do monthly giveaways, so just by being an Insider member, you get monthly giveaways. They give over $100,000 plus per year of giveaways, gear, tags, hunts. Another unbelievable thing about the Insider is the Go Hunt Gear Shop. So every time you buy something, you accumulate points. In essence, it's giving money back to the Insider. You might ask, well, how does this work with the Go Hunt Insider? How does the 30-day free trial work? You can sign up to try Insider's industry-leading hunting products free for 30 days. They do take your credit card information so that you can automatically become a member once your 30-day trial ends. You can cancel at any time during the 30-day free trial, and it doesn't cost you a dime. You might ask, how is this different from other resources out there? Insider provides analysis and tools for every unit, every species, and every hunt. In each state that they cover, they don't just cover the top 10 units. Their coverage is super in-depth, and you can find those hidden gem units, maybe something that the draw odds are a little bit better, and maybe some quality. It's slipped through the cracks, and you might find a great hunt there. Right now, Go Hunt Insider covers Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, and Wyoming. All you have to do is go to gohunt.com/JScott and check it out now.
Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we have Daniel Franco, my friend from Heber, Arizona, of Burnt Timber Outfitters. Daniel, how you doing?
Doing good, Jay.
We're right here at the beginning of August, and the last time I talked to you, I think, was around application season. We were talking about deer applications. At that point in time, winter moisture was pretty bleak. Spring moisture was pretty bleak. What has happened, say, in the last month, 2 weeks to month with the monsoon storms there?
Well, as usually happens, we finally got our monsoons. They kicked in about the 1st of July. Unfortunately, when they first started up, they were a little sporadic, a little bit of rain, here and there, not real widespread across, any particular area. So it was a little spotty there for a while, but it didn't take long, and we've had some really good rains. For the most part, most of 3C, quite a bit of 23, Unit 1, 27. They've all got their fair share of rain for sure. So
what about that 4B country? Did it get any of the moisture?
It's been a little sporadic out there, even still. It seems like a lot of the higher southern parts of the unit, the higher elevation stuff, got some pretty good rains. As you start to transition into the pinon juniper, it's kind of mixed. Some of it's got rain, some of it's a little dry still. There's kind of a big 4 or 5 mile stretch right there, kind of in the middle of the unit, that still is pretty dry. It's starting to green up a little bit, but tanks are dry. And then either north or south of there, There's a lot of places where tanks are full, and you can definitely tell that it's ran water and kind of washed out the roads in places. So still a little kind of hit and miss in 4B and even in 3A for that matter. But it's got enough to green up the grass, but not quite fill up the tanks yet. So in some of those spots.
And talking about 3C in general, was the moisture that you've gotten over the last couple of weeks pretty widespread, and has the country greened up pretty much all over, or is it spotty as well?
No, 3C, here, I'd say here in about the last 2 to 3 weeks, we finally got some pretty good widespread moisture. Some pretty hard rains in areas. Other areas it just kind of drizzled for about a day or two. So the majority of 3C is looking really good. Greening up good. Tanks have got water. So yeah, that 3C is looking good. There's parts of the unit I think that could use a little more moisture, and some have gotten quite a bit. But overall, it's been pretty widespread across the unit.
With moisture, the monsoonal moisture coming, and looking pretty good, do you feel like it has benefited the bulls in any way in regards to antler growth, or do you feel like it's pretty much, what did come was too late to make an impact? Would be my first question. And the second question is, have you seen enough bulls to be able to determine if we're looking at average, below average, above average, or kind of, what we're looking at as far as elk antler growth?
Well, I think, specifically in 3C, I think the rains that we did get were a little bit too late to really help out the bulls. The crazy thing about 3C is right now there's probably 6 bulls in the entire unit in 3C. The rest are on the Fort Apache. So, it kind of depends on, what the Fort Apache has gotten. I can tell you in 3A and in parts of 4B where we've got resident elk and resident bulls that we've seen, I can tell you that they're definitely down. We're below average. And my best guess, just looking at what bulls we've seen from year to year, looking at them this year, we're probably a good 20 inches off, some even more, some as much as 30 inches off. So, and granted, those units didn't get near as much rain. So kind of our wild card there is going to be, the reservation. Depends on the Fort Apache. If the bulls over there had, if they had the moisture, if they had the feed and the nutrients that they needed to help them, through the hot, dry summer months. So that's kind of yet to be seen, and one of those things where time will tell, definitely on those. So
now with this monsoonal moisture, the bucks in 3C, obviously. You like looking at those mule deer bucks. Do you think that the moisture can do the bucks some good? I mean, obviously they have a longer growing period. What's your thoughts on that? And have you seen some good bucks already?
Absolutely. I think with, and we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but our deer tend to kind of just cycle later than your Utah and even your strip deer and whatnot. They rut later, they shed later, they start growing later. So, normally by about the 1st of July, your biggest of 4 points are going to be just a frame at that point. So, they're going to be out to their ears, split main beams, balled up pretty bad. So they're just kind of starting to grow. So these rains are definitely going to help them. I don't think it's really going to affect our deer that much, just because we've got the moisture now when they're needing the growth the most. So I have seen a couple of bucks. It's still a little bit early to really tell what they're going to be, what they potentially could finish out at. So that's another thing where we'll just have to kind of wait and see how they finish out here towards the end of August, first part of September and see kind of where we're at there. But I think with the moisture that we've got, the way the forest is greening up, I think on our last podcast I talked about acorns. If we can get an acorn crop, then I think the deer will be just fine.
With the point guard system that Arizona now has, you've got units right there around your house. You've got your 4Bs that don't take a lot of points, and you've got your 3Cs and 23s that take quite a bit of points. Have you had conversations with any of your hunters, or as far as people considering possibly turning their tags back in because of the antler growth on the elk being down? Just curious your thoughts on that, or do you feel like there'll still be some good bulls, and you're encouraging your clients to go ahead and push forward?
No, we've definitely had that conversation. In fact, we had a pair of guys who have been applying, for a long time. Going into the draw this year, they had 17 points. They both applied for 3C archery. They drew in the max pool, and we were going to just kind of play it by ear and see how the year was going to look, what the bulls were going to look like. Well, since then, both gentlemen have had injuries. One injured his shoulder and the other one injured his knee. So at that point we talked again, and we talked in great length about it, to be honest with you. And anyways, we decided that, with the moisture this year, with as dry as it's been, my feeling is the elk are going to be down, due to our dry conditions, and with them not being 100% healthy with the shoulder and knee injury, I recommended to them, turn your tag back in, eat the application fee this year, and with you being in the max pool, you should be guaranteed a tag next year, barring some crazy thing in the draw, and then we do it again next year with hopefully better moisture, better antler growth, and hunters that are 100%. So we've talked about that with elk clients. I've actually had the same conversations with our deer clients as well, that let's just kind of wait and see what happens. My biggest thing is these guys wait for 17 or 15, 17 years, whatever, to draw a 3C archery bull tag or a 23 archery bull tag or whatever. And, it hits on a bad year when we didn't receive hardly any spring and summer moisture. I've told them, hey, let's wait and see what it looks like. And if it's absolutely down and it's not going to be as good as we're hoping or think it's going to be, turn the tag back in, get your points back, and let's reboot for next year. I hate to see somebody, have to, kind of be forced to hunt on a bad year in Arizona when they've waited so long for a great tag. So,
yeah, makes sense. With that being said, anybody out there listening, Daniel, have you been able to fill up those positions or those spots? Or if there's anybody out there listening, do you have availability for the archery hunt in your guide service?
We do not for the archery. We're booked full for the archery hunts. And to be honest, we could make one more opening for the early rifle hunt or early muzzleloader in either Unit 1 or 3C or 23 North. That would completely fill us up. We're full on deer. So yeah, at this point we're sitting pretty good. Going into this year, we're pretty full.
Sounds good. So with the green up though in 3C, do you feel like the cows are going to be good and fleshy by the time the season comes? And do you anticipate, a good solid rut? Do you have any type of feel yet, or is it still too early to kind of determine that, being, say, 40 days out or something? Is it too early, or do you feel like with what you see, they'll probably be feeling good, which in turn will probably, make them want to, act like elk?
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, with the green up that I've seen here in the last, 3 weeks, everything's green. The elk are looking good. The deer are looking good. Everything looks pretty healthy. I think that because it did hit right at the 1st of July, which is a blessing in my opinion, I think that will give those elk plenty of time to recover from, the stress of being dry, of not having the proper nutrients in the feed. Now with it greening up, that should give, our cows a good solid 2 months of high nutrition, green grass. I think that in turn will kind of roll right into Mother Nature, and they should be healthy enough that they'll come into heat, and of course then the bulls will start acting like bulls and doing what they live to do once a year, and that in turn should be good for all of us. So.
Sounds good. I want to take a quick break here to hear from our sponsors, and then I've got some elk questions. I know you're busy. I just want to get a couple elk questions from listeners answered, get your opinion on some of them, and then we'll be off and running. So let's take a quick break here.
Guys, we're weeks away from the start of hunting seasons in most states. No doubt you'll have some trips planned. If you're going to be out for longer than a few days, take a look at Canyon Cooler's Outfitter line of premium ice chests. They're going to keep your ice intact for just as long as the other premium coolers, but aren't going to cost you a fortune, leaving more money in your pockets while keeping your food and drinks cold. And here's the deal. There are subtle differences between coolers that you don't really notice until you've used a few of them. What's great about the Outfitter series from Canyon Coolers is they're designed to be flush vertically without the cupcake tops you'll see on other premium coolers. This lets you fit them into tight spaces with ease, and they're not going to get hung up on other gear. It's one of those things you'll really appreciate after you've used them that you don't even realize before. And Canyon Coolers offers the coolers industry's no hassle, no fault, lifetime warranty. No matter what happens to your ice chest, no matter who bought it or how long you've owned it, if the cooler falls out of the back of your truck and you drag it down the highway for 50 miles, all you have to do is send them a picture of the damage, and Canyon will replace or repair the cooler for you. It's the last cooler you'll ever need to buy. It keeps ice just as long, if not longer, than the other premium brands. Costs you less and is backed by an incredible warranty and a Second Amendment supportive company based in Flagstaff, Arizona. And now, just for my podcast listeners, save 10% off Canyon's already low prices and get free shipping by using the promo code JScott at checkout. Check them out at canyoncoolers.com.
Okay, Daniel, I've got a couple questions here from listeners and Instagram followers. This comes from Holes3 on Instagram. For archery elk, should my top sight pin be set at 20 or 30 yards? In other words, should he set his top pin for 20 or 30? What is your opinion for archery elk, Daniel?
My personal opinion is 20. And the reason I say that is, it's not uncommon to get a bull, under 10 yards. I mean, I can think of about 5 or 6 bulls that we've killed with archery equipment that were under 10 yards. I can also think of a handful of bulls that were missed even at that same distance, just because guys, they get excited, they draw back, they put all their pins on the body and end up launching one right through the hair on the top of the back. So, I think with 20, it gives you a little more solid aiming point versus, okay, anything under 30, I just hold here. Logistically speaking, is your arrow going to fly, pretty true at that point? Is it going to be a couple inches high? Is that really going to matter? Probably not. But I think mentally it would be more beneficial to the hunter to have it set at 20, 30, 40, 50, however they set their pins at that point. So personally, I have a 20. So I'd probably say 20 yards.
Okay. Next question is DT Hughes 4 from Instagram. What's the best tactics in a more pressured unit like a 6A or a 4A or a 4B? I assume he's talking about, archery elk, season. He's talking about what are the best tactics in a more pressured unit? What are some bits of advice you can give for hunting pressured elk?
Well, I'll tell you the number one technique that I use is to either call less or to not even call at all. You get in these pressured units, and I would consider even 3C to be a pressured unit. There's not a ton of tags in the unit, but because the unit is surrounded by communities, you've got, Forest Lakes, you got Hebrew Overguard, Clay Springs, Pinedale, Show Low. There's so many locals that enjoy going out and, playing with elk during that time of year, that the elk tend to feel pressured and to get pressured. So probably the number one tactic that I like to use is to not call. Let the elk do their thing. Let the elk be elk and slip in on them. At that point, if you're right there and you're close to getting a shot, then maybe a well-timed, cow call or something will a lot of times pull that bull in just close enough for a shot. Personally, I like to get in close on elk, let them do their thing, and let them make the mistake, and then get within bow range and let it rip. So,
I think that's great advice. Another question, Western Hunter _55. Do you do a lot of driving at night, chasing bugles during the rut? Daniel?
I have. It kind of depends, I guess, on the time of year, the time in the season when if it's an early season and they're just starting up, then I will. But quite often, especially during the hunt, the elk will get pressured and they'll move. So a lot of times once we get done hunting an area and we're heading back into town, and to be honest with you, I've done this in the evening after dark. I've also done it in the morning about 9 or 10 o'clock if where we're hunting kind of peters out and there's not any bugling, the bulls are bedding early. I'll take a different route, headed back to town and stop multiple times, and even then, throw out a cow call here and there into canyons where I know elk normally like to bed. And a lot of times you can get a response and get stuff fired up. We've killed multiple bulls doing that at 10 o'clock, driving back into town and stop in a spot, walk over the edge, cow call, and a bull screams. Get a look at him. Hey, that's a shooter bull. Work down there, call him in, and shoot him. So, I've used that technique quite a bit, to be honest with you.
Good stuff. Jordan JC5 from Instagram. If there's a lot of water in an area, what other factors do you look for to find elk? So let's say that you've got lots of dirt tanks, lots of water, maybe even moving water, what have you. What other factors do you look for to find elk, Daniel?
Well, obviously during the early seasons, once an elk becomes vocal, that's obviously the best way to locate them. That's the way I prefer. And we don't have a lot of live water in 3C. We do have some springs, and occasionally with the right rains, we will get a little bit of live water. But even in areas where there's a lot of water, there's game and fish catchments and whatnot. It's always good to check those for tracks. If there's any way to get some elevation and glass, that's typically the way that I like to try to find them. If I know there's an area that's got quite a bit of water, and water tends to be an issue on not, glassing is always one of my favorite things to do. Get up high, glass. That a lot of times you can locate elk that way, first, and then like I said earlier, especially during the early seasons, once they start bugling, then that's one of my other primary ways of getting them located.
Here's another question from Diaz Rocky 24 on Instagram. When facing a unit with not a lot of elk, but a unit that has a lot of hunters, how would you hunt that?
I kind of consider 4B to be kind of fall into that category where there's not a lot of elk typically in that unit. There's not a ton of hunters, but it always seems like there's more hunters and hunting pressure than what there are elk. So something that I like to do, I like to go to the kind of the outskirts of those units. Like for example, in 4B, I'll go down, into the low country and go early and find your water sources, find your tracks, find where there are elk, especially resident elk that live there year round. A lot of times that can be the difference between an extremely frustrating hunt because of all the hunting pressure versus, a good hunt where you don't have a lot of hunting pressure. You can get away from a lot of that hunting pressure because you're off into areas where typically it's not elk habitat. And that way you can have a great hunt. You can have, even a successful hunt at that point and avoid, kind of the pitfalls of dealing with other hunters and hunting pressure.
So in other words, if you know that you've got a unit that doesn't have a ton of elk and you're going to have quite a bit of people pressure, what you would say is maybe don't even focus at all in the summer or any of your scouting efforts in those areas where you know that people are going to be, maybe up in the high country, up in the pines, maybe close to some of these towns and some of these units. Maybe go out on the outskirts. What you're saying is go find some places that are not either fun to hunt or that would be one thing where it's, a little tougher or it's marginal country. But if you can find those elk early, find out where they're at, and even if you're not dealing with a lot of elk, if you've just got a handful of cows and a bull or two, when the rut starts, that might turn into 4, 5, 6 bulls that you might have all to yourself, whereas you could have 8 or 10 bulls up in an area that, is a highly pressured area. I'd rather be hunting 2 or 3 bulls by myself than, hunting with a bunch of people. So I think that's
right.
I think that's good advice. I think.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Yep.
So we've got 2 more questions, and then I'll let you go. One question is from MBA Steen 38. Do you know any info on early archery 27? Personally, Unit 27, I have not stepped foot in there during the archery hunt. What I do hear is that it's you can get some pressure like what you're talking about, Daniel. You can get quite a bit of pressure up, say, in the high country, and that there is some transitional type country, some big canyon country, maybe some places where there's not as many roads, that you can kind of get away from people and get out there and maybe not find as many elk, but maybe find a big elk. The other thing that I know about 27 is with that wallow fire, it used to be that some of those transitional areas or those areas further out in the PGAs would be good in 27. What I have heard with the fire, though, that a lot of those elk have, kind of transitioned and migrated, much like 3C, and most of the elk have congregated into those burn areas. So, and I'll let you answer after this, but one thing about it is you got to go where the elk are, and if the fire, the burn has concentrated those elk, you're probably going to have to hunt in those burn areas. And I remember after the Rodeo Chetasky fire in 3C, it's probably changed a little bit now, but if you weren't hunting in that fresh burn area, you were not going to find elk because they basically all migrated into those areas because of some of that fresh feed and such. So I would keep that in mind if I was hunting Unit 27. What are your thoughts, Daniel?
You're right on. I mean, 27 does not have a lot of vehicle, type access areas like a lot of these other units do. So unfortunately, those units that are easy to get to, or those parts in the unit that are easy to get to, are going to have a lot of hunting pressure. It's those areas that are hard to get to that, might require, a couple of miles hiking into, the Blue Wilderness or into some of these areas where there are no roads. That's where you're more than likely going to have your best success because, it's, and I've mentioned this before, it's hard enough to beat an elk at his own game in his, in his living room doing what he knows how to do, and you're trying to beat him at that game. When you add 2 or 3 other hunters in the mix, and you've got, more scent and people doing stuff that you think is, not smart coming in, upwind, whatever the case is, it's hard enough to kill them as it is by yourself. So when you go throwing 3 other hunters into the mix, it almost makes it impossible. So yeah, I mean, just, trying to get away from easy access areas, especially in 27, that's where, you're really gonna up your success rate on that, is by getting into those areas where it's just, you and the animals, and avoiding that other pressure.
And Daniel, the other thing I've heard about 27 is that the bugling throughout the archery hunt can be fairly sporadic, meaning it can be red hot on fire one day and the next day just kind of be dead. It's not a consistent, with that being said, I've heard guys talking about great bugling in 27, but it's kind of like a Unit 8 where it kind of has a reputation where it can be red hot one day and dead the next. So I would say if you're planning to go in 27, keep that in mind. Don't get discouraged. What are your thoughts on what you've heard on the bugling in 27?
About the same. But some days are really good, some days are not. And I'll be honest, we've kind of experienced those highs and lows, in 3C and in Unit 1, and even in 23. It's just, it seems like, some days they're just on fire and they're going, and a lot of times, I'll attribute that to a hot cow or two in the area. And once that cow gets bred, it kind of dies off. But it does seem like I've heard that a little more about 27, just being kind of hit and miss than I have, some of the other units. So, and it's not like the elk left. They're still in the area. They just, again, I would probably, they clammed up a little bit. One of the cows comes into heat. There's kind of a bugling frenzy that takes place for, 12 to 24 hours. And once that cow gets bred, everybody just kind of, it's like, well, okay, I guess we got to wait for the next one type of deal. And everybody kind of clams up and they're not going to talk. And it kind of, I guess it kind of takes the wind out of their sails for an evening or a morning until they kind of start getting back into their active rutting activity. So.
The last question here, Daniel, is from Homestead_Industries, and it says, archery hunting. Would you leave behind your tripod and spotting scope to keep you lighter in your pack, or would you always carry those to keep for midday glassing? So I guess it's a two-part. Well, when I think of this question, I think of, first of all, what state are you hunting? If you're hunting Colorado where you've got big canyons and big basins and, you need that spotter, you need that tripod to glass across a big basin, that would be one thing. I would say pretty much most of your hunting in Arizona, I would probably leave the tripod and leave the spotting scope and run and gun and go light. If you're backpacking in Colorado and, you're not really into the elk and, you could be somewhat limited if all of a sudden, you got on a bull or two that was bugling, they clammed up and you wanted to glass across a basin. One thing is, how big a bull are you looking for? You can probably determine with your, 10 power chest binoculars that you've got if it's a, big enough bull that you want to kind of go after. Unless you're, seriously trophy hunting, I would probably say, as a general rule of thumb, go as light as you can. Leave the spotter, leave the tripod back at camp.
Yeah, definitely. Especially here in Arizona, if I'm going to put a guy on a hill, I'm going to tell him to take his spotting scope and tripod to glass. Now that's, obviously I would have a hunter with me and put a spotter on a hill basically. But yeah, I can't think of a season, an archery elk season 1 where I've actually carried a spotting scope with me. I do carry a tripod just because it gives me, stability, especially if we're in tight on a bull and we know they're bedded. I'll pull my tripod out and pick it apart, trying to find a horn or a leg or a, piece of body color. Now, if I'm hunting Colorado or Montana or some really big open country, where it's going to save me a 3-4 mile hike to get to a bull, then I'm definitely going to pack a spotting scope, because then I can put that on. I can take a look at the bull. I can glass during the midday. So yeah, I definitely say that's, kind of two-part. Depends on where you're hunting. It depends on the terrain and all that. So if it's going to save you half a day to get to a bull, then definitely carry a spotting scope. If you're hunting Arizona, definitely not. Light run and gun. Chase as many bugles and look at as many bulls as you can, and that's going to be more of your line of success. So.
Well, Daniel, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the recap of the forecast of the monsoon, and obviously we've got a little bit of a wait here for these bulls to start bugling, but I'll look forward to checking back in with you. Probably do kind of a mid-archery season kind of rut report, see what you're seeing, see what you're hearing, and I appreciate your time as always on the podcast. I know the listeners get a lot of value from listening to you, and best of luck to you and Mikey and Jay and the rest of your guides there at Burnt Timber Outfitters, and just want to give you a chance to let the listeners know. I'll put it up in the show notes, but if guys want to hear more about what you guys do there in your core units, how do they get a hold of you?
Probably the best way is we've got our website, www.burnttimberoutfitters.com. It's got in our contact page, it's got phone numbers and emails where they can contact us either way. They can either email us or call us up. They can also follow us on Instagram. We've got a Burnt Timber Outfitters Instagram, as well as myself and Mike also have Instagram pages ourselves. Mine is Franco _BTO, and Mike's is Mikey, that's with 2 E's, _BTO.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for your time. I'll let you get back to it, and look forward to seeing how you guys do this year, okay?
You bet. It's going to be fun.
All right, buddy. Take care. Thank you.
All right. You bet. We'll see you, Jay.
I want to thank theoutdoorsmans.com for their sponsorship of my podcast. I want to let you guys know they are the optics authority, and if you're looking for any binoculars, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, make sure to get a hold of the guys at the Outdoorsmans. If you use the JScott promo code, you get a 10% discount on all Outdoorsmans products. Go to outdoorsmans.com, or you can call them at 1-800-291-8065.